Well, hey, Andy.
Hey, Dad.
Here we are back for another TV Lounge podcast about Timeless.
Yep, episode 3.
Shall we jump into it? Are you ready?
Yep.
All right. Episode 3, it's titled Atomic City. And you remember last time we talked, you guessed correctly that Atomic City is a reference to Las Vegas.
Yes.
And at the end of the last episode, remember Lucy returned home to what she found out is her engagement party, and she met her fiance. As this episode opens, Lucy's looking through some photo albums and she sees a birth certificate. But she's interrupted by her fiance. He asks her about one of the pictures that shows them at the beach. And Lucy pretends to remember it. He says it was the day they got engaged. Then he tells her he found her engagement ring in the bathroom and he puts it on her finger. Now, he starts to get a little amorous with her, but Lucy's phone rings. It is Denise Christopher, the agent with Homeland Security. She asks Lucy, what happened on September 21st, 1962? And Lucy doesn't know. Agent Christopher tells Lucy to figure it out because Flynn has traveled in time again.
At Mason Industries, Agent Christopher is complaining that it's been 3 hours since Flynn jumped and they don't know where. Mason calls Rufus aside to talk to him about Anthony, the project director who was taken by Flynn in the first episode. Mason suspects Anthony was helping Flynn, but Rufus doesn't buy it. Jaya says she found out where Flynn has gone. She says they are in Nevada within a 50-mile radius of Las Vegas. Lucy says President Kennedy was in Las Vegas that day for a fundraising event, and they wonder if Flynn is planning to kill President Kennedy.
The next scene is 1962 Las Vegas outside the Sands Hotel. In one of the hotel rooms, President Kennedy's in bed with some woman. People outside around the pool begin doing a countdown from 10. The woman slips out of bed to look outside. When the countdown reaches 0, we see an atomic blast go off on the horizon. Kennedy joins the woman at the window, and by the pool, we see Garcia Flynn looking up at them. He has a camera and starts taking pictures of Kennedy and the woman kissing. Back in the present, Lucy, Wyatt, and Rufus get into the time machine. Wyatt asks Lucy about her engagement ring, and we find out her fiance is named Noah.
They take off and materialize in the middle of the desert just as that atomic blast occurs. And Lucy tells them that before Las Vegas was known as Sin City, it was called Atomic City. Next, the three of them are inside the Sands Hotel Casino. Rufus walks off and comes back a few moments later with some uniforms. Then we see Wyatt and Rufus in waiter uniforms, and Lucy is dressed as a waitress. She sets a drink on a table, and one of the men at the table gives her a swat on the butt. Kennedy's girlfriend notices and calls him out. Rufus spots Anthony and goes over to him. He tells Anthony they can take him home, but Anthony refuses and tells Rufus to leave. Rufus then realizes that Anthony isn't a prisoner of Flynn's, but an accomplice. Anthony orders another drink, and we see Flynn enter the room dressed as a waiter.
Flynn goes to President Kennedy's girlfriend. He calls her Miss Campbell and says she has an urgent phone call from her sister. But Flynn takes her out the back and says she is to do exactly what he says. Wyatt follows. He and Flynn get into a fight. Miss Campbell runs off only to be intercepted by Lucy and Rufus. Wyatt asks why Flynn was after her. She says she doesn't know. The woman says she's Judith Campbell, and Lucy recognizes her name. When Judith tries to escape, they find out that Flynn is blackmailing her. He has pictures of her and Kennedy together.
Next, we're out in the desert. It's later that night. Anthony and a couple of other men sit by a campfire, and Flynn drives up. When Flynn threatens to kill Rufus, Anthony objects and says he, Anthony, gave up everything for what they're doing. Flynn mentions wiping Rittenhouse from history. Flynn gets back in the car and leaves, and we see the two men with shovels digging a hole nearby. Switch to Lucy and Judith talking. At the same time, Wyatt and Rufus are discussing how Anthony seems to be working with Flynn. Wyatt takes Judith back to her room to use her as bait to catch Flynn. Wyatt waits in Judith's room with gun in hand, but Judith grabs a phone, hits him on the head, and runs out of the room and right into Flynn, and she goes with him willingly.
Judith and Flynn drive up to the entrance of a military facility. The guard lets them through because the general is expecting her. Judith enters the general's office and takes a set of keys that she gives to Flynn in exchange for those pictures of her. Rufus comes running up, says he knows why Flynn is in Las Vegas. Now we see Flynn unlocking a storage facility. Inside is an atomic bomb. We see Rufus explaining that Flynn doesn't need to steal an atomic bomb, just the plutonium core, and that's why Anthony is there. Flynn is taking the core to his time machine. Wyatt, Lucy, and Rufus take a car and chase after. Lucy rescues Judith, but Flynn and Anthony escape.
We switch back to the present. After learning that Anthony is probably working with Flynn, Agent Christopher tells Wyatt to also eliminate Anthony since Flynn won't be able to use the time machine without a pilot. Connor Mason tells Jaya to track down Flynn's time machine in the present. Cut to Lucy and her fiance, Noah. She tells him she needs to go stay with her mom for a while so she can sort some things out.
We then see Flynn, Anthony, and a henchman get in a vehicle and drive to the desert to the spot where they buried the plutonium core 50 years earlier. End of episode. Next time, we're going to a party at Castle Valar. So, and any thoughts on this one, Andy? I've got quite a little list here.
Yeah, why don't you jump into your thoughts?
Well, at first, when I got to the end of this episode, I thought, this is like the first half of a two-parter that could have said to be continued. You know, there wasn't a kind of a conclusion. It just, that was it. All right, let's go through some things. Is Lucy still teaching?
I mean, that's a good question. This seems
how long
like
is
this
she
would be occupying most of her time.
Okay. I'm going to jump around here with my thoughts. They're rather random.
Okay.
If Flynn had the bomb's core, why did he bury it only to dig it up 50 years later? Why not just bring it back with him to the present?
Yeah, that didn't make any sense to me either, because the core was quite small. They should have explained that, or that should have been part of the plot. It was a little weird that, I don't know, there seemed to be no reason. They just kind of did it.
Back when Lucy was looking at the scrapbook, can we assume that that's her birth certificate? And she's maybe looking for the name of her father? And when Wyatt, now you're going to have to help jog my memory here. When Wyatt's in the hotel and he sees that sign for the telegraph station, you know, he goes in and he tries to arrange to send a telegraph, but he wants it delivered 50 years in the future because he's trying to send a warning to his wife about the day that she dies. And then Lucy catches him and he says, well, it worked in Back to the Future too.
Yeah.
I seem to recall seeing something, either another TV show or a movie, where somebody was doing the same thing. They did something that had to be delivered, you know, years and years later. Can't remember what it was. Do you know what I'm referring to?
I don't. Yeah, I can't think of anything else where they've sent like a telegram or a letter or something. But yeah, that was the thing in Back to the Future 2, where it was, well, Back to the Future, 3, or at the end of the Back to the Future 2, Doc goes back to 1885, and then at the very end of episode of Back to the Future 2, that letter shows up for Marty that they've been holding on to for
Maybe
the past
that is
years.
what I'm thinking of, was from Back to the Future. Okay. When Flynn and Anthony are arguing, Flynn seems to be surprised that Wyatt and Lucy and Rufus had followed him. But he wasn't surprised in the first 2 episodes when they showed up.
Right? Doesn't he know he's being chased?
I would
I mean,
think so.
was he
Unless
just surprised that they found out where he was?
Yeah. Maybe these were not filmed in order.
Yeah, that could be.
Or maybe the episodes were not written in order. Okay, now here's one I know. This is really crazy of me. You remember that scene where you see Flynn driving away in a truck under the light of that full moon? And let me bring the picture up and show you.
Okay.
You remember that? They're driving away near the end of the
Yeah.
episode. Okay, I don't know why, but I thought, gee, I wonder if that date in 62, if the moon really was full. So
Uh-huh.
I checked, and no, it was a half moon.
Fake.
So, fake. The whole show is fake now.
They need to have historians doing they should have had Lucy checking and advising the script.
Yeah, exactly.
No, I do love it though when you encounter a movie or something that they go to that level of detail. That's that
Yes.
kind of like it
Yes.
just really satisfies my OCD brain. Where like it doesn't matter, but you check and it's like, oh, that's cool.
I wouldn't have thought of it, except this picture again. The moon is so stinking bright. It's more like, you know what it's like, you're watching something and your eye is automatically pulled to the moon, not so much watching the car.
Right. Yeah, it does. It kind of hogs the attention.
It grabs your attention.
I didn't have any really specific thoughts about this episode as far as story or plot exactly, other than kind of agreeing with the thoughts and questions you had. I don't understand why he would have buried the core to dig it up later, except for the fact that, I don't know, I guess it's cool to to be able to do that because you have a time machine.
Yeah, but it didn't look like they were digging very deep. And where something was so valuable and to risk leaving it out somewhere for 50 years where someone else could have dug it up or discovered it. Some guy stupid. Walking around the desert looking for
metal detector.
Yeah, with his metal detector.
Yeah. My kind of main thought at this point is that I'm having a hard time getting invested with the characters. I feel like the plot is kind of keeping me interested enough, but I don't know, I don't feel there's a level of realism or something that's missing from the characters. I just feel like I'm having a hard time latching onto them, and so I'm kind of not sure how.
Yeah.
If as it goes, if I'm going to feel more connected to them, or if I don't at some point, I feel like I'm just going to lose interest. So we'll have to see.
And I know they're trying to keep us invested because they've given us this mystery of Rittenhouse. And we've got this whole business with Lucy's sister disappearing. How can things be set right again?
Right.
And the fiance, there's a whole lot of things going on.
Yeah. And I am kind of interested in those plot things, but as far as character development, I feel like it's a bit weak at this point, so we'll have to kind of see how that turns out.
So I think this episode was better than the Abraham Lincoln episode, the number 2. At least for me, it was better.
Yeah.
I don't know why. Maybe it was just because it was in a more modern setting than post-Civil War.
Yeah. Well, there are. Okay, can we talk about what was Flynn trying to do? Or let's see, Kennedy was there.
Yeah.
What was he trying to do with Kennedy? Nothing.
I don't think anything.
What was his objective? Was his objective just to get the plutonium core, and that was it?
I think so. That's why I say this seems like part 1 of a 2-parter.
Mhm.
He took the pictures of Kennedy and this Judith Campbell so that he could
Mhm.
blackmail her as a way to get in and steal the atomic material.
Mhm. But it
So
seems like
he,
that's all he was after was that,
yeah,
and he
yeah.
succeeded.
Maybe we'll find out in the next episode if there's some follow through with that.
Right.
But again,
I I almost feel like I would rather watch the show from Flynn's perspective, as if he was the main
oh,
character. You know what I mean?
maybe
Yeah.
it'll turn into that a bit because uh he has told Lucy that she's going to help him.
Right.
So I am maybe by the we get further along, things will kind of, change a little bit
Mhm.
that way.
Mhm.
I guess
Yep.
we'll have to wait and see.
It'll be interesting to see. Maybe it'll happen in the next episode.
Well, we're going to find out next time we get together. And the episode is called Party at Castle Valar.
Oh,
And
before
we'll
we go,
find
should we
out
give this one
what
a
that means.
rating?
Oh my gosh, yes. I'd say I'm gonna go with I'm gonna stick with my 6
Okay.
just because there's some things that are still a little what do I want to say? A little too vague, and I'm not quite sure what we're dealing with. So I need to see the next episode if it follows through with this one, and then talk about both of them.
Yeah. That's kind of what I was kind of thinking is similar. I was thinking like 6.5.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'd say 6.5.
One thing, did you notice, and I saw this somewhere, that when the show starts and they play a little bit of the episode, and then it comes up and you see the numbers scrolling and turn into the word timeless?
Yeah.
If you pause that right when it comes up, it'll show you the date that they're traveling back to.
Do they
And
have they
that
been have
date
they
will
done that every episode?
every episode, yeah. And that date will
Oh.
then, those numbers will then roll into the word timeless.
Well, that's kind of a cool little detail.
It is, isn't it?
Yeah.
But
Yeah, that's fun.
but the thing is, we already know because of the beginning of the episode, we know where they're going.
Right, right. Yeah, that's
So,
kind of cool.
and I guess we're going, and
All
we'll
right.
just get together next time.
Okay, see you for the next one.
All right, see ya. That wraps up this episode. Join us again next time here in the TV Lounge.